we have a platform that's able to move, but now we need to add some obstacles into our world that can actually hurt our player, and if it deals enough damage, force the player's level to restart. So what we need to do here is right-click in our scripts here, and we're going to actually start by creating a damageable script that will allow our player to actually take damage. So we're going to right-click, go to Create, and C# script, and we're going to title this Damageable, and then we'll open that guy up. And inside of this, we can actually just delete all of this code right off the bat because we're not going to be using any of it. Then we're going to start by typing public int health equals 3, and then we'll say public virtual void take damage, and then our parentheses there. We'll say if health is greater than 0. And then in our curly brackets, we'll say health minus equals 1. So we're subtracting 1 from our player's health because everything in this game is always going to deal 1 damage. So our player's only going to be able to get hit 3 times. And then we'll say after we subtract 1, if our health is now less than or equal to 0. It should never be less than 0, but you know it's always good to write code to include anything that could maybe happen. So if our health is less than or equal to 0, then we want to use on death. And now we haven't wrote on death yet, so we're going to get an error there until we do. So let's step down outside of take damage and write that. We're going to say protected virtual void on death, open and close parentheses and our curly brackets. And we're going to say game manager dot instance dot reload scene. So that means if our health hits 0, we're going to tell the game manager to reload our scene for us. We will be adding our game manager now to our test scene so that we can test that out. So let's go ahead and right-click in our hierarchy view and hit Create Empty, and then rename this object to Game Manager, and then hit our Add Component button and search for Game Manager and hit Enter to grab that guy. Let's also go ahead and make a prefab out of that so that we can easily add that to our future levels. So we'll just drag and drop that into our gameplay prefabs folder here. Now we have our damageable script set up. We do need to jump into our player controller, so we can open that any number of ways. You can do it through the project panel. I'm just going to click on my player and double click into the script here. And we just need to go up to the top of player controller and replace where it says mono behavior with damageable. And what that's going to do is it basically changes player controller to say that player controller now it is the damageable script. Everything that's in this damageable script is now a part of our player controller. Even though our player controller does all of this other stuff, it just also happens to have this code inside it as well. We just don't need to type it out again inside this script. So that's a nice little thing there. It's called inheritance, and it's a very important skill to understand, or thing to understand, I should say. But once we've got damageable replaced there, we can go ahead and save our script again. And if we go back to our scene, we'll see our player controller component here in the inspector now has our health variable at the top. You are welcome to change your player's health. If you want to give them more or less, that's fine. Just keep in mind that every time they take damage, they are going to take 1 damage. So if you give them something like 100 health, they're realistically never going to actually die. And if you give them 1, they're going to have a chance for 1 mistake. So I would say somewhere between 3 and 10 is probably good. 3 is probably on the harder end. 10 will be much easier for someone. But you're welcome to change that as you see fit. It's also important to note that if you change this value on the prefab, it will change it in every scene that you have your player. But if you're in a scene and you change their health value, that value will only be updated for the scene you're in. So if, for example, in level 2, you want your player to have more health, you would select their object in level 2 and adjust that health value. But if you want them to have less health in another scene, then you would go to the other scene and adjust it there. If you wanted to give them a health that's the same across all the scenes, then you would change it on your player prefab here. Of course, remember to save your scene and move on to the next one.